Hello and welcome to Staff Picks, the podcast for movie nerds by movie nerds. As always, I'm Mario Lanza and I am your host on our journey through the movies out there that just need a little more love in the world. And our movie tonight is a perfect example of that. This is my personal favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. We're going to be talking about the 1994 movie True Lies. One that is never, ever, ever mentioned as anybody's favorite Schwarzenegger movie. In fact, it's been kind of forgotten over the years. It was a big, huge blockbuster at the time. It made a big impact on the world. And then for a variety of reasons we're going to talk about, it was just kind of forgotten to the point that to this day, in 2019, it's still not even available on Blu-ray. I don't know if people know that. It's kind of forgotten and you never see it on TV. So I'm really excited to delve into a movie which I personally would put in my top 20 movies of all time. And my guest today, let's see, I don't know what you would know her from. I go way back with her. Her name is Christine Giver, and she and I worked at a website called Survivor Central many years ago. She was a writer named C.J. Blake. And she was very popular on the site. She is a pop culture fan, pop culture expert, movie lover, and I'm dying to ask her about this because I know she works in burlesque. So welcome to the show, Christine Giver.
Hi. So I do many things. I have many interests. Yes, burlesque is one of my newest passions. My name in the burlesque world is River Thong. Some people watch Doctor Who, so if you watch Doctor Who, then you get where that comes from.
I'm proud to say you are the first host I've ever had on Staff Picks with the name Thong. So
Woo!
Welcome. So, True Lies. How did you become my host for True Lies? Give us a little back history on your history with the movies. And I know you yourself had suggested this one that you really, really, really wanted to talk about True Lies. Give us kind of your back history here.
Yes. So True Lies is also one of my favorite movies of all time. Definitely easily in my top 3 favorite action movies of all time. It's amazing. I think I first saw it when I was probably a little bit too young to watch a movie like that. But my mom was a really big Jamie Lee Curtis fan, and she loved the movie. And so I watched it, and it's just, I loved it the first time I saw it. I've probably seen it like dozens of times at this point. But it's just, it's amazing. It's my favorite Arnold movie. It's my favorite Jamie Lee Curtis movie. It's my favorite Tom Arnold movie. It's just wonderful.
Wow, your favorite Tom Arnold movie. That's a extensive list.
I mean, yeah, I don't think that that's hard. I'm pretty sure for most people, they would say that that's probably one of his better films.
So this and The Stupids, I think, would be the top 2.
Sure.
Now, I'm glad you brought up Jamie Lee Curtis because I have said this for years, and I'm really excited I can finally document this on a podcast. I have long said that Jamie Lee Curtis is my favorite actress, and she is also my good luck charm in movies because out of my top 20 movies of all time, Jamie Lee Curtis is in 3 of them. And I'm so excited that I finally get to mention that. She is in Halloween, which I love. She is in A Fish Called Wanda, which is my favorite comedy of all time. And then she's in this, where she almost steals the movie from Arnold. So, once again, just a shout out to Jamie Lee Curtis, my personal favorite actress.
Oh, wow. I figured that. I know how big of a Halloween fan you are, so.
Yeah, A Fish Called Wanda. That's the one in the middle that people don't remember. Which is, to me, that's like a Jamie Lee Curtis showcase. I love that movie. Have you seen A Fish Called Wanda?
I have seen parts of it. I don't think that I ever have seen it the whole way through.
Okay. Well, I'm just warning my listeners, A Fish Called Wanda is coming at some point this year just because I love that movie so much. Although, switching tracks. Now, are you a Schwarzenegger fan in general?
I like the movies of his that I like are movies that I think would not be the ones that people think of. Because, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people, like the Terminator movies or they like, Predator or things like that. And that's not my go-to. This is definitely my favorite, but I would say of his movies, my second favorite is the movie where he was a cop guy, and like in a dystopian future, and they do the different games and stuff like that. I don't know why I can't think of it right now.
The Running Man.
The Running Man, yes.
Okay, yeah, I personally am a Schwarzenegger fan, although I lean more towards his comedies and his comedic movies. Like, I like the first Terminator, but it's not quite as fun for me. I like Terminator 2 because it's a little more fun. And, like, I like Total Recall, but it's not my favorite. It's a little too over-the-top violent and not quite as fun. Like, to me, True Lies is the one movie where he finally perfected his formula of action and comedy.
Yes.
And it's funny because I'd mentioned that the other day, and I got a lot of pushback on that on Facebook. People said, "Oh my God, True Lies is your favorite over like T2 and what's the other, Total Recall." But yeah, I will always forever defend this one as the best because I think this is the one that not only did he perfect his formula, but it's very kind of sad because this was like his last hurrah. He never really made a giant movie after this.
No, he really didn't.
Yeah, and I will say, Arnold backs me up. I was just reading the Internet Movie Database trivia before this, and he said, this is the movie I was made to do. So this, I think, is his favorite as well.
Yeah, it certainly sounds that way. I'm not sure when that quote was from, but yeah, I mean, I think it is. It like you said, it has that balance, and I think that's what makes it so great.
Yeah, and just this, I think this is the funniest Schwarzenegger movie. I know Kindergarten Cop gets a lot of stuff and Twins, but like the laughs in this one, I still laugh about to this day. Would you agree with that?
I do. I mean, it's very quotable. And I'm a pretty big fan of quotable movies. I mean, most people that know me know that The Princess Bride is my favorite movie of all time. So that's exactly one of the reasons why I love this movie, because I can go back and just like pick out different lines from it and laugh about it.
Okay, and let's talk about the other elephant in the room with this movie, is that it gets remembered for being a Schwarzenegger movie. It gets remembered for being a Jamie Lee Curtis movie. A lot of people don't remember it as a James Cameron movie. And that's one thing I wanted to bring up, is that this movie, like I said, for a variety of reasons, it doesn't get talked about this much anymore. But one of the biggest reasons is because this was the big James Cameron movie at the time. I don't know if you know this, Miss Thong, that this was the most expensive movie of all time.
Yes, it was at the time. Yeah, and what's interesting about James Cameron is that as of I don't know if that's changed since then, but as of 20 years after the film was made, it was still the only James Cameron movie that didn't win the Oscar for Best Visual Effects.
That's crap. Did they not see the Harrier scene?
I guess they didn't.
Yeah, but anyway, the James Cameron thing is interesting because James Cameron was known as making the gritty action adventure movies, sci-fi stuff, and like every one was better than the one before it. And again, I personally argue this is even better than T2. But then this was the last movie James Cameron did before Titanic, which really elevated him into a different level, a different stratosphere, a different audience. And so people kind of forget about True Lies. That's one of the reasons I think this movie kind of gets forgotten, because they needed Titanic, Avatar, and now he's a whole different thing. But this was like the last straight action movie he did.
Yeah, that is true as well. Yeah, and it's sad that, that it doesn't get that much attention, because usually people who have seen it, when they remember it for like one thing in the movie that they happen to remember, and they don't really like think of, everything that's in it, and everything is just great.
Okay, and two things I wanted to mention about True Lies before we get into the plot. One of them I knew, one of them I didn't know until today. Did you know that this was supposed to be a Spider-Man movie?
I did not know that it was supposed to be a Spider-Man movie.
I just read that today, that James Cameron, after Terminator 2 and all the movies he was doing then, wanted to do a Spider-Man movie. And he had a whole script written. It was an R-rated script. And he had Leo DiCaprio as Spider-Man. And he had Arnold as Dr. Octopus. And that was the movie he was going to make. And for a variety of reasons, it didn't happen. So they just repackaged the script a couple years later and made it with Tobey Maguire instead. But because that movie fell through, Cameron's like, well, I want to do something with Arnold, so let's just do this script instead. So this was supposed to be Spider-Man, but it didn't happen.
Huh. That is very interesting.
And the other thing that I want to point out is how you can best describe this movie to people is that it is basically if Arnold Schwarzenegger made a James Bond movie.
Yes.
In fact, I would even go so far to say that this is not only my favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, this is my favorite James Bond movie.
Sure. I mean, it's pretty close. I think, the way that I've seen it described is if James Bond had a wife and kids to come home to and like answer to and stuff like that. So
yeah, and that's exactly how Cameron pitched it too. He's like, what if James Bond had a wife and kids? And yeah, so it all worked out. And I will personally say I have never been able to take a James Bond movie seriously after seeing True Lies because it's like this is the ultimate. They can't top this. This is a James Bond movie.
Yeah. It really is. So.
Okay, we're going to dive into here one of the most quotable movies, one of the greatest action movies of the 90s, which was the action decade. But I have to share one thing, Christine, before we get into this, that when I first saw this movie, I was very disappointed with it. And I hate to admit that. Let's see, could you guess? I don't know, this would be almost impossible. Could you imagine why a person would come out of this movie and be disappointed with it?
I mean, I don't know. After seeing it so many times and I still love it, I really don't know.
Okay, I will give you a hint. There's a certain line that Arnold Schwarzenegger was known for in every movie he ever did, and he didn't say it in this movie. And I was waiting the whole movie, and there were several times he could have said it. He does not drop a "I'll be back" in this movie.
That is true. He doesn't say that.
Yeah. So I will forever remember seeing this movie with my parents in 1994, coming out and being a little bummed because we never got "I'll be back." And it took a couple reviewings for me to watch it and realize, okay, maybe I don't need that. It was awesome anyway.
I mean, he did use a couple of the other normal Arnold things, the whole grab my hand. He did use that, so.
Did he ever yell at somebody to get down?
I don't think he did. I don't remember that.
Okay. Now, just before we dive into this, do you have a Schwarzenegger impression ready?
I mean, I wouldn't be very good at it.
Well, I mean, one could argue, was Arnold even good at it? Come on.
I mean, that's fair.
Okay, so we are going to dive into True Lies, my favorite Arnold movie, my second favorite action movie after The Rock, just because The Rock is awesome. But this one is funnier than The Rock, so anyway, here we go. So, True Lies, how do we start? This one starts in Switzerland, right? In the mansion?
It does.
Okay, explain that to people. Do a little setup for people, because I know I actually have a couple listeners who have never seen this movie before, which I'm aghast by, but okay, they have never seen it, so set this up for them.
Yeah, so it starts off in Switzerland like a traditional spy movie. I mean, the whole Bond thing definitely translates there, where there's a big, gala or event, and there's armed security all over the place, and clearly, anybody who is there is probably very rich and important, and then here comes Arnold under the icy water in a scuba suit, breaking through so that he can sneak into the party.
Yes, here comes our secret agent, Harry Tasker, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I have to give a little asterisk here that I love. Almost every Arnold movie, he has the most white bread name as a character. Yeah. When I look at Arnold, I think, oh, that's Harry Tasker. Or that's John Kimball. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So here he comes, and Arnold is a secret agent. He's infiltrating this mansion in Switzerland. He comes up through the ice in this river, and I love the shot where he's got a wetsuit on, and he pulls off the wetsuit, and he immediately has a tuxedo underneath, and he blends in with the party.
Yep, so easy.
Now, who are some of the characters? Oh wait, he's got a backup team. Explain his backup team to people.
Yes. So his backup team is Tom Arnold's character, who is in a van. And then there is also another analyst with him that is, trying to help hack the files that Arnold's trying to get within the mansion. So they're in a van off somewhere else in the distance, not super nearby, while Arnold's getting into this party.
You know what I just realized? If Arnold comes in through a frozen river and Tom Arnold's in a van, Tom Arnold is literally in a van down by the river. So yeah, we have Tom Arnold as Arnold Schwarzenegger's sidekick, and there's a couple funny little things about this movie is that it has amazing side characters. In fact, I would say this movie has two of the funniest side characters I can think of in any action movie ever. One of them, inexplicably played by Tom Arnold, who I've never seen funny in anything else. And the other one is going to be Bill Paxton. We'll get to him later.
Right.
Yeah, so Tom Arnold, and the other guy is Faisal.
Yes.
Fast Faisal. My wife loves Faisal. That's her favorite.
Yeah, so they're in this van and they're waiting for Arnold to do what he needs to do. You know, he gets into the party, of course, you know, is able to effortlessly brush off anybody who looks at him, you know, very questioningly, like, who are you and what are you doing here? And he just, you know, makes up excuses along the way for what he's doing in various places. And manages to get into a room upstairs so that he can start the whole hacking process.
And I should add that Arnold Schwarzenegger, as the world's greatest secret agent, seemingly speaks every language known to man.
That is true.
Yeah, he's going to drop Arabic on people. He's got, what other languages? There's like 4 languages he speaks in this movie.
Yes.
There's German, yeah, French.
Mm-hmm.
So Arnold gets in and he's hacking into this mansion is owned by a guy named Khaled, and he's a suspected arms dealer. So Arnold is hacking into his computer and they download all his files, and then Arnold has to escape the mansion unopposed. And on the way out, he meets another great character in this movie, Juno Skinner, the female femme fatale, played by the babylicious Tia Carrere. Now, I have some trivia about Tia Carrere, Christine. You might want to hear this.
Okay, sure.
If Tia Carrere were a president, she'd be Babraham Lincoln. Yeah, so Tia Carrere did not show up in too many movies, although I was always a fan of her because she was absolutely gorgeous. She was in Wayne's World, obviously, and she herself has said the favorite movie she ever did because it's the only time she ever gets to be a villain.
Right.
And what is she? Juno Skinner, what does she do in this movie?
So she deals in arts, and she seems to be a person that really is just focused on what, you know, the financial aspect of things. So, you know, making money off of her art dealing, which we'll find out later from a motivational standpoint is, you know, as far as what she does, and why she does it. But yeah, that's what she's there for, is to deal with Khaled.
Are you a Juno Skinner fan?
I don't know that I'm like a fan of hers. I mean, I am a Tia Carrere fan, and actually that was part of why I was like, oh, cool, the chick from Wayne's World's in this movie, and you know, I really wanted to see it, and it was just such a different take for her.
I love her as a villain. I really wish she would have done more villain roles because she's got such a mean face when she wants to.
Right.
But she's great. We'll talk more about Baby Majora here later in the movie. But yeah, so Arnold's in the mansion trying to escape with the data, and he gets cornered by Juno Skinner, this gorgeous arms dealer. And instead of trying to escape, because the guards are kind of onto the fact that somebody has stormed the mansion, he decides instead to seduce Juno Skinner and do a tango with her. And this will be one of the things that most people remember about this movie, the tango scenes.
Yes, that is correct. I mean, I would say that that's probably 60% of the time when I mention this movie to somebody, they're like, oh, that's the movie where Arnold did the tango. Yes. And I mean, he had to practice the scene for 6 months. So I guess if people remember that movie for that, then all of that training paid off for him.
Yeah, I read that there's so many things Arnold has to do in this movie that are action things that he'd done in other movies, but he'd never tangoed. So he had to do all these tango lessons. And I will say, I'm not entirely sure it paid off because I remember seeing this with my mom in '94, and her initial instinct during all the tango scenes is they're never showing him from the waist down. There's no way he knows how to tango. So my mom instantly calls bullshit on Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he didn't do as well, so yeah.
But yes, he tangos with Juno Skinner and seduces her, and she falls in love with him, basically, and then that's the end of it. And now he has to escape the mansion. He's placed the bug. He has downloaded all the files. He has to get out. And again, this is a typical James Bond opening. This is exactly what you'd see in a James Bond movie.
Yes, it is. I mean, kind of just down to the last detail. But it's done in, definitely a more humorous way. It's definitely not like straight like the James Bond movies are.
And we do get one of the best Tom Arnold quotes in the movie. I will set you up for it to see if you remember it, where Tom Arnold's like, "Get out of the mansion, get out of the mansion," and Arnold won't because he's too busy slow dancing with Tia Carrere. And then, do you remember Tom Arnold's movie, do you remember Tom Arnold's line, his last bit of advice to Arnold here?
Oh crap, I don't remember what that line is specifically.
Seconds count, buddy. Ditch the bitch.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah,
Now I got it.
That's it. That's Tom Arnold. Okay, so Schwarzenegger leaves the mansion. He gets outside, and the guards are all there, and they're like, "Let me see your invitation." And Arnold shows them his invitation by blowing up their storage shed. And then from here on out, it's just one big chase scene. Again, just a James Bond opening scene of every single guard on skis with guns coming after him as he runs down to the safety of his van.
Right. And what's so funny about that scene is because I don't know if you've ever watched the TV show Archer, but I had watched this movie since watching Archer, and there is a particular episode where Archer is running from bad guys on skis and, various types of travel devices on, that go through snow. And it reminded me so much of that scene in that movie. So it almost made me wonder if whoever made that episode of Archer stole that idea from True Lies.
Well, my wife hates James Bond movies, and she always says, every single one is in the snow, and they all have skis. They're so stupid. And I love that this movie even has snow and skis for no apparent reason, just as a James Bond tribute.
I mean, they were in Switzerland. It's fair to say that they had skis there.
Okay, and right here we have one of my all-time favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger action stunts with the dogs. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay, explain this one to people. This one makes me laugh every single damn time I see it.
Yeah, so he's trying to get away, and the bad guys have these attack dogs, and the dogs come after him, and he just picks the dog up and has them basically headbutt each other and knocks them out, which I've never seen before in a movie ever.
He does the bonk defense on the guard dogs, where he picks them up, slams their heads together, and knocks them down.
Yeah.
It's great. So Arnold escapes to save the day, and he gets in the van with Gibb and Faisal, and they go back to the United States with their mission accomplished. And it's a wonderful James Bond opening. We're kind of glossing over some of the details because this is a long movie.
Yes.
But I just say it's a great James Bond opening. It would fit in any of the Roger Moore movies especially.
For sure.
Okay, so we go back to D.C., and we get a little glimpse into Arnold Schwarzenegger's home life here. So explain this to people. What kind of a setup does he have back at home?
So at home for him, it is kind of like the polar opposite of his spy life. He himself, I think he makes himself ultra boring, and his wife is, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, is just this plain legal secretary who just, kind of goes about her life, and they have a rebellious daughter who, has a boyfriend on a moped, and I mean, like that's kind of what he's got there.
And we do have a future star in this movie as his daughter.
Yes, Eliza Dushku.
Yeah, she's only like 12 years old in this movie.
Right, and I mean, at that point, of course, nobody really knew who she was, and she would eventually go on to play a spy herself on Dollhouse. So
yeah, okay. So his home life is his daughter Dana, who hates him, his frumpy wife Helen, played by Jamie Lee Curtis. And I gotta say, they really frumped up Jamie Lee Curtis in this movie. They have her looking so mousy and so meek, and I love it. And it's gonna make her transition later in the movie so much more awesome.
Well, right, and I'm sure that was done, intentionally, because it gives more of a contrast. I mean, if she was just like, maybe she's just a little bit frumpy, it just wouldn't have had the impact that it did.
Yeah, and I do have to give people a little back history here. Jamie Lee Curtis, if you don't know, when she first came up, she did like Halloween and all the Scream Queen movies. And then after that, she did a succession of roles where she was always the sexy one. very sexually aggressive, very dominant. Usually you'd see a lot of her body. And it was really interesting to see them really frump her up and make her look all dowdy in this one, to the point that she's going to reveal herself to old Jamie Lee is going to pop up later in the movie. But it's really awesome, the transition she goes through.
It is for sure. And I mean, like you mentioned, because before that, I mean, when she was in, Halloween and things like that, I mean, I was a kid, so I didn't have any concept of like what a sex symbol was. But I mean, when I grew up and understood things, then, people told me, oh yeah, like Jamie Lee Curtis was a big sex symbol back in the day. And I'm like, oh, okay. It was something that I wasn't even aware of. So, for people that would have been at that point, then they would have really seen the juxtaposition there.
Yeah, there's a movie in the early to mid 80s called Perfect, I believe, with I think John Travolta's in it, and she plays an aerobics instructor. And there's a very famous topless scene she has in that one. And I believe at one point she was called the perfect body in Hollywood. So It's very interesting. We're going to see Jamie Lee reveal that once again later in the movie. But not for now. For now, she is Helen, the sad, lonely legal secretary.
Yes.
Okay, so we go to work. And we see where Arnold works. Arnold and Tom Arnold play the character named Gibb. And they work in a place called the Omega Sector. Yeah, so they have to walk through the Omega Sector, and there's all this high-tech security, and they go over this little seal that says this is like the last line of defense in the U.S. This is like the ultra-secret, ultra-high secure, the top most trained agents in America that protect the U.S. against terrorism. And we meet their boss. I don't remember his name, but he's played by Charlton Heston, right?
Yes, that is correct.
And Charlton Heston is mad because they were supposed to get all this data from Khaled, and they somehow screwed up and got caught. And so they said, what did you learn? So what did they learn? They learned a little bit about the plot here. What Khaled is into.
They learned that they were looking into nuclear weapons, that there is a terrorist group, the Crimson Jihad, and that's what they were trying to do, was acquire nuclear weapons.
Yeah. So this guy's an arms dealer in Switzerland. He's trying to acquire nuclear weapons, and somehow they're trying to smuggle them into the United States through this Persian architecture, these Persian statues that Juno Skinner herself is buying. So again, it's a very convoluted James Bond setup that what we need to know, these nuclear weapons are coming into the U.S. This beautiful woman, Juno Skinner, is somehow behind it. So Arnold is going to have to meet up with Juno Skinner again and find out a little more about what she's doing.
Yep. And I mean, considering his meeting with her the last time in Switzerland, it makes sense because it wouldn't be out of place. I mean, she did tell him to contact her. So I think that works out pretty well for him in terms of the plot flow.
So we get a lot of juxtaposition here of Arnold doing his stuff at work, his spy stuff. Then we flash back to Jamie Lee Curtis doing her boring legal secretary stuff. And that's the whole charm of this movie, this married couple not realizing what the other person really does for a living. And this will come to a payoff later. But for now, we bounce back and forth between a spy and a legal secretary who just assumes her husband is off at a sales convention selling computers.
Yep, and I mean, he makes it pretty believable, so it's easy for her to just kind of go along with that, and yeah.
And the other running joke, of course, is that Harry will miss every important event back at home because he's off doing spy stuff, but she doesn't know this, so she just thinks he's late for everything.
Yes, because he's doing his important computer salesman work.
Yes, and Harry.
Yeah, Harry.
Okay, we're going to get to the first big action set in this movie. I'm going to just skim through a couple things here where Harry goes to visit Tia Carrere. He finds out she brings in Persian art into the U.S., and she's got all these Arab henchmen that kind of do this work for her that bring in the stuff. Turns out that they're the actual terrorists. They're working with her, and they're suspicious that this guy, Harry, is onto her and is spending so much time with her. So they start following Schwarzenegger. They're like, why is this guy hanging around? What's he looking for? And this is where we get the first big action part of the movie where 3 of the terrorists are going to follow Arnold downtown into Washington, D.C.
Yes. And actually, it's funny because I think every time I've seen that movie, I thought to myself, I mean, they're trying to get nukes into the US and do all of these things. So I get the suspicion, but like going after him guns loaded seems kind of an extreme response to that without actually knowing that he was a spy. So that was always interesting to me.
Christine, the Crimson Jihad is not subtle. Oh, I have to point this out. For years, my brother and I loved this movie, True Lies, and that's the name of the terrorist group, the Crimson Jihad. And for years, that would be one of my favorite fantasy baseball team names, the Crimson Jihad. Until 9/11 happened 7 years later, and then it wasn't quite so fun to make jihad jokes. So, the glory years of the Crimson Jihad, 7 years of fantasy baseball.
Right, and also the reason why the sequel to True Lies never got made.
Yeah, talk about that. That's very interesting. I don't think a lot of people know that.
Yeah, so they were talking about that for years. James Cameron wanted to make a sequel to True Lies, and they just kind of went back and forth on it, and it was in development, and then 9/11 happened, and the very next year they were like, terrorism isn't funny anymore, so we're probably not going to do this.
Yeah, and I would also argue that's one of the reasons this movie never got released on Blu-ray, why it kind of got forgotten, why you don't see it on TV, is because showing terrorists in a comical Looney Tunes way perhaps was not quite so fun after 9/11. So, unfortunately, like I said, for a lot of reasons, this movie just kind of got forgotten for several reasons. But yeah, that's definitely one of them, I would say.
Yeah, for sure.
With that being said, let's talk about this scene and let's shit on some terrorists a little bit. So these three terrorists come into Washington, D.C., and they're following Arnold. And Arnold's got these spy glasses where he can see what's happening behind him. And they meet up with him in a bathroom, and we get a classic Arnold Schwarzenegger scene where he goes mad-ass on these two terrorists with machine guns in a bathroom.
Yeah, and do you know that originally that scene was supposed to take 1 day to film, and it ended up taking 7 days to film because James Cameron said, no, this has to be so much bigger than what it is.
What? How dare you suggest that James Cameron would go over budget and over scope on something? How dare you, Miss Thong?
That never happens.
Yeah, for people who don't know, James Cameron, very notorious for always going way over budget on everything, and it will pay off, but yeah, he's kind of a pain to work with. But yeah, this bathroom scene is fun. He takes out two terrorists, and then the main guy, Aziz, comes after him with a machine gun, and we get a really long, protracted chase scene here where Aziz tries to kill Arnold. Arnold escapes, and then Arnold tries to catch Aziz, find out who this guy is, and Aziz is on a motorcycle. Arnold is on a horse, and they basically race through the entire rich section of downtown Washington, D.C.
Police chase on a horse.
Yes, with Arnold repeatedly saying, sorry. Every time he inconveniences somebody, I always laughed at that. He says, sorry, as he runs over a police cruiser, sorry.
Yep, and of course, this famously culminates in going up to the roof of a building and the motorcycle doing a jump across from that building to another building where there is a pool on the roof.
Yeah, I have to say, when I saw this in the theater opening night with my parents, and yeah, Aziz is on his motorcycle, he jumps off a skyscraper, and then inexplicably lands in a swimming pool on another skyscraper you didn't see in the shot before. Like, almost everybody in the theater laughed at how inexplicable and how unlikely that was. So I'm just pointing out that in the theater, that did not get a good reaction.
And I never saw it in the theater, so I wouldn't have known that. But yeah, I mean, that was one of those things that I'm like, this movie is full of things that need to go on Mythbusters to say, can this really happen? Can someone really jump off the roof with a motorcycle and do this and be okay?
You know, what's funny is my son watches Mythbusters, and I swear they have done this stunt on Mythbusters. Could you jump off a skyscraper into a swimming pool and be okay?
I mean, I don't know. I'd have to go back and look because I never saw that on Mythbusters, but it seems kind of unlikely.
Yes. So this bad guy, Aziz, has escaped, and he's like the lead of the terrorists. He's the lead Crimson Jihadi. And we go back to work, and this is where Arnold has missed his own birthday party because he was out chasing Aziz, and his wife and daughter are mad. But one of my favorite quotes in the movie here, Christine. They go back to the Omega Sector, and they're trying to figure out who this guy was Arnold was chasing. They find out his name is Salim Aziz, and they find out he's this huge baddie. He's killed people all over the world, and Faisal says he's known as the Sand Spider. And Charlton Heston's like, why? Why do they call him that? And Faisal says, probably because it sounds scary.
I mean, it does, so he's right there.
Yeah. So that's the first movie. The first movie is over. This really is 3 movies in one. There's the Arnold story, there's the Helen story, and then there's the Arnold and Helen story. So we finished Act 1 with Tia Carrere bringing in all this Persian art with nukes into the U.S., and Aziz, the leader of the Crimson Jihad, trying to get them, and they're kind of on to the fact that Harry is after them. Now we're going to go into story number 2, which is my personal favorite story in this movie.
Yes. So basically what happens at this point, because, Harry has been all busy with the, chasing the terrorists and everything else like that and missing his birthday party, that he doesn't realize, that his wife is unhappy. And he goes to her office to surprise her for lunch and hears her talking to a guy.
Yes, so apparently in all his neglect for his wife, Harry has allowed Jamie Lee Curtis to start up an affair with a mystery man. And Arnold is horrified. Oh my God, my wife is having an affair. And what do we learn at the start? We just learn that she's having an affair, and Arnold is crestfallen. And like Gibb, his buddy, has to cheer him up. He's like, what do you think? You're never there. Of course she's going to be banging some other guy. But this is where this movie turns into a flat-out comedy, when we learn exactly who her mystery man is.
Yes. So basically what happens at this point is, Harry is like, I'm a spy. I have access to all of these resources. So we're going to bug her phones and start surveillance. And then he turns, and finds out that this guy is, at first he thinks, oh, this is a spy too, and finds out that it's way different than that.
Yeah, this is. Again, I have a friend, Mike Feeney, just was talking to me. He's like, I've never seen True Lies. I'm like, you have to see it just for Simon. Simon is the greatest character in any movie ever. Bill Paxton here is Jamie Lee Curtis's, what would be the right word? Her lover. They haven't quite consummated it yet, but he's working the angles. He's trying to get in. His shtick is he is a used car salesman who pretends he's a spy to meet women. And it's Bill Paxton at his smarmiest best, and all we hear is the phone conversation of him giving spy stuff to Helen, and her being all excited by it because she wants some excitement in her life. And this is where we find out where Arnold has to go meet Bill Paxton at the used car lot.
Yes, it is great. And actually, I didn't mention this earlier, but this is also my favorite Bill Paxton movie. So,
oh, yeah.
It's just, he's so great. And yeah, Arnold goes to meet him at the used car lot to kind of get a little bit more details. And, he's asking him, how do you meet these women, and tell me about them. And then he, gets him, he's like, oh, are you talking to anybody right now? And gets him to start talking about Helen. And he's like, oh yeah, she's hot and has an ass like a 10-year-old boy. And of course, Arnold's getting extremely irate about all of this.
Yeah, okay. Let me pull out some Simon quotes here, which are not appropriate whatsoever. Simon perhaps does not treat the female gender with the utmost of respect. But,
he does not.
No, he does not. Yeah, Christine can verify. Simon talks about how he picks up women. Again, he's Bill Paxton in a comb-over and a mustache, a little used car salesman. And what he has is he has a Corvette that he drives around to make women think he has money. And his exact quote here is, "The vet gets him wet. It's all about pussy." So Arnold's like, you're talking about my wife. Like, he doesn't realize this yet, but Arnold's trying to figure out, who is this guy moving into my woman? And then Simon's like, that's how you pick up women. You lie to them. You promise them danger and adventure. You work on their dreams and you get them out of their rut. And Arnold's like, what about their husbands? And Simon's like, dickless. If they took care of business, I'd be out of business. And Arnold's like, ha ha, those idiots. So, Arnold's going to pound the crap out of this guy. But here we go. Here's the other quote that you had said earlier that he's like, I got this one lady, Helen. I got her panting like a dog. And here we go. I'm going to go right into my Bill Paxton impression. He goes, this is word for word. Please don't cancel me on Twitter. I'm just quoting Simon. He's like, she's like a lot of these babes. You get their pilot lit, they could start a leaf blower. And you should see her pair of titties. Makes you want to stand up and beg for buttermilk. Ass like a 10-year-old boy.
It's so horrible. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's perfect. But then there's a fantasy sequence of Arnold punching him in the face and killing Simon.
Yeah. And it would not be the first time that Arnold punches Bill Paxton in a movie.
Yeah, so what other movie did he punch Bill Paxton?
In The Terminator.
Yeah, so if there's ever been a more punchable character, Simon has got to be right up there. Makes you want to stand up and beg for buttermilk. That's the line.
Yep.
My God. So we find out later that Gibb, Arnold's sidekick, thinks that it's hilarious that this world-class spy is being cheated on by a used car salesman. So he's laughing. He thinks this is hilarious. And Arnold is going crazy now. This guy is cheating on me. Let's find him. Let's kill him. And they put all the surveillance. So what happens here? This culminates in the big confrontation scene, right?
Yes. So they, basically, Simon takes Helen back to his place or whatever and is like, yeah, so you need to come to Paris with me. And, all of this stuff. And then she agrees to do it. She's like, I just need to, take a chance and do something. And then all of a sudden, boom, there's a helicopter and there's guys rushing in and everything's just crazy at that point.
Yes. Simon, in an attempt to woo Jamie Lee Curtis, is taking him back to his international lair, a.k.a. his trailer, and he's really putting the moves on her, trying to get her to stand up and beg for buttermilk, and it won't work. Helen won't do it. She will not give in to Simon. She won't sleep with him, but eventually she agrees. Just because she's in such a rut in her life, she will agree to go to Paris with him, pretend to be his wife as this spy mission, just because her life is so sad. And this is when, of course, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Tom Arnold and all them burst in and scare them and kidnap them, and then Simon's like, what the fuck, man? Like, he has no idea.
Take her!
Yeah, take her! Oh, although I have to point out the one other line here where Simon is trying to get Jamie Lee Curtis to sleep with him, and she won't do it, and he resorts to the classic maneuver, if not for me, do it for your country.
For your country.
Yeah, so
it's like, wow.
I love this scene. Unfortunately, True Lies kind of gets a little hit. A lot of people think it's misogynistic during this part of the movie. Although James Cameron has defended it. I've read his response to that. Have you seen what his argument why it's not?
Not with respect to that part specifically.
Okay, yeah, he says this whole point of the movie is about empowerment to Jamie Lee Curtis. She's had a sad life. She's given a promise of adventure. Arnold's going to give her a promise of adventure, and then she will take it, and it changes her life. It makes her all confident. By the end of the movie, she's super confident. So he's like, these scenes are a little uncomfortable here, but it leads to a greater purpose later.
Right. And I mean, I think that that's a fair point. That's kind of the way that I always saw it. I mean, it wasn't that she ever had to change to like be this like sexier, more confident person for anybody. She did it because she wanted to.
Yeah. Although here's the scene. A lot of people have a problem with this scene, the interrogation behind the one-way glass scene.
Right.
Okay, so set this one up for people. What do they do with poor Jamie Lee after she has been taken from Simon's lair?
So Jamie Lee Curtis's character is put in an interrogation room with a two-way mirror and just like a stool for her to sit on. And behind the other side of the mirror is Arnold's character and his buddy Tom Arnold there. And they're basically interrogating her, asking her questions. And at first it's, kind of to make it sound like, who are you working for? And, stuff like that. But then the questions get much more personal as far as asking her, your husband isn't really ringing your bell anymore, is he? And stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a very antagonistic scene to begin with. They're very harsh. But the tone of the scene changes because Arnold's trying to figure out, why did you cheat on me? Like he's like, did you love this guy? Why did you cheat on your husband? And she's like, I just needed something in my life. I was sad. It's so boring. I just sit at home. I need a purpose. And he offered me adventure, and I kind of took it. And Arnold's like, did you sleep with him? And she's like, hell no. And she gets all mad. And so, but it really kind of takes a turn here where we realize that he starts to feel bad. He realizes, I've neglected this woman all these years. I didn't give her, the love and the life she wanted, and she turned to this. So he starts to feel bad.
Right, exactly. And then he at that point decides to give her that sense of adventure that she's looking for, while at the same time kind of resolving that whole situation in a really interesting way.
He is resolved. The affair was over. The affair actually never happened. She never slept with Simon. But she even says the line she's like, I needed to feel alive. And he's like, okay, so he's going to do something for her. And again, it's in his own way, it's very romantic. He's going to give her a spy mission where she can feel alive and feel like she did something. And they're going to set her up as a spy with their agency. And the line that always makes me laugh here, I don't know if people will get this joke. They say, you were going to work for us, and your code name, your contact's name is going to be Boris. And your name is? And she's like, Natasha? Because a lot of people, I don't know if you know, that's a famous spy duo back in cartoons, Boris and Natasha. And he's like, no, not Natasha. Your name is Doris. And she gets this look on her face, well, that's stupid.
Yeah, I mean, I love that whole scene. That's one of my favorite scenes in the movie. And actually, like, I think one of the lines that Jamie Lee has, it's probably one of my favorite quotes from a movie ever. And I think it's like the most impactful part of it, where, like you said, she said she just wanted to feel alive. But there's a part at the end before he decides to do that where she says that she wants to look back and say, see, I did that. That was me. I was reckless and I was wild and I fucking did it. It's just like that, I don't know. That's one of my favorite things in the whole movie.
Yeah, you kind of forget how good Jamie Lee is in the dramatic scenes in this movie. Like, she's good in the action, she's good in the comedy, but she really has a couple good monologues, and I think this scene, she really kind of steals it here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, she's central in that scene, and that just kind of leads into the next part, which is also one of my favorite scenes in the movie, so...
Are we talking about Simon's humiliation?
Well, that too. I mean, like there's so many good scenes in this movie.
Okay, well, let me drop a little trivia on Jamie Lee Curtis. I just read this earlier today, that when they were casting this movie, they had a hard time figuring out who would be the wife.
Right.
And Arnold Schwarzenegger did not want Jamie Lee Curtis. He didn't see it. It didn't work in his head. And James Cameron is like, she's perfect. I've seen her in A Fish Called Wanda. She can do comedy. She can do sexy. She can do everything. And so they had this big debate between the two of them, who would be the wife. Eventually, because Arnold Schwarzenegger couldn't find anybody better, he's like, okay, I will trust your judgment. We'll go with Jamie Lee Curtis. And to his credit, Arnold loved Jamie Lee Curtis so much in this movie that at a certain point, I don't know if people know this, that normally when the star signs a contract, you get the billing, like your name, it's always Arnold Schwarzenegger in True Lies.
Right.
Arnold Schwarzenegger actually waived that part in his contract, so it would be Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jamie Lee Curtis above the titles. He just did that out of the goodness of his heart because he felt that it was a co-script movie. They were partners. It was about their relationship, and she was equally as important as he was to the story. So he waived his contract so she could be up there. And Jamie Lee Curtis, in interviews, has said how amazing that was because nobody ever does that.
Right. They really don't. And I mean, like you said, the movie is kind of, three movies in one, and it's very much about them as a couple. And so I think that it would do the movie, an injustice if it wasn't that way.
Yeah. And we are about to get the scene where she actually probably steals the movie from Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yes.
Okay. First, we have to dispose of Simon, the used car salesman. After Gibb and Arnold are convinced that Jamie Lee is actually on their side and is going to work for them now, they have to go dispose of Simon, who they say is the international terrorist Carlos the Jackal. They take him to a freeway overpass and they're going to push him off to his death. And suffices to say, Simon does not take this well.
No, Simon is not very happy in this scene. He basically reveals his true colors and like, no, I'm not Carlos. I'm not a spy. I'm nobody. I sell cars and I have a tiny dick. And, like he just tells everything.
Yeah, let me once again go into my Bill Paxton impression as I quote Simon, who has so many great lines in this movie. I'm not a terrorist. If I ever saw a gun, oh my God, don't kill me. I'm a total coward. I have to lie to women to get laid. I'm nothing. I'm navel lint. I got a little dick. It's pathetic. And then Schwarzenegger pulls off his ski mask and Simon sees it's him. And Simon gets all excited. He goes, hey, you're the car guy. You're the car guy. You still interested in that Corvette?
As if he would be like, at that point, like, I wonder why if he was at my dealership for another purpose and not really to buy a car.
Might I remind you, the vet gets him wet.
Yeah.
So, I have to say, in the theater, this got the biggest laugh, this whole scene with Simon. And Simon's so pathetic, they won't even kill him. They just tell him to piss off. And then Simon literally pisses off because he pees himself.
Yep.
So, poor Simon, left humiliated. Although, the great thing about this movie is Simon will return later.
I know. I'm like, you would think that would be enough for him to be like, nope, I'm not doing this anymore. But that's not the way Simon operates.
Okay, so let's lead up to the big Jamie Lee Curtis scene, one of my favorite scenes of any movie in the 90s, where she is being sent on her first mission. And I will set this up so you can explain it, that Jamie Lee is now Doris, the international spy, and she's supposed to go on a mission, and she's terrified. And there's a great scene at home where she's at dinner, and her hand is shaking, holding the coffee, just waiting for this call, and Arnold has to pretend he doesn't know why she's going to get called. And so, what is her mission? She gets a call eventually. What is she sent out to do?
So she is told that she has to go to a hotel where there's going to be an arms dealer waiting there for her, and she is told to dress sexy, and she is a hooker named Michelle, and that she has to tell him that his normal girl was not available, and then that he just wants to watch because she's terrified. She's like, oh my gosh, am I gonna have to sleep with him? And no, he just likes to watch. So she has to go to the hotel and do this. And then plant a bug on the phone while doing this.
Here's the part of this scene. There's many parts of this scene that are fantastic. There's the scene that my mom always laughed at. My mom, I remember, loved this movie. Is that they tell Jamie Lee Curtis to dress sexy in her sexiest outfit. And we immediately cut to her at the hotel, and she's in the least sexy dress you have ever seen. This is her idea of sexy. It's this big old frumpy 1920s ball gown. It's terrible. Just lace all over. That is how this middle-aged housewife thinks a hooker would dress.
Apparently so. Yeah. I mean, that's what I think of when I think of a hooker is, completely covered from head to toe in like black chiffon and everything.
Yeah, so poor Helen Tasker is supposed to be the sexiest call girl hooker. She's going to walk into this arms dealer's room, and she has to seduce him and plant a bug. And she has no idea what she's doing. And there's the wonderful scene in the front of the mirror. Explain that one to people.
Yes. So basically she's on her way to this room, and she stops in front of a mirror and looks at herself and, probably is like, no, this probably isn't that sexy after all. And so she proceeds to tear off all the big floofy parts of her dress and, essentially making it so that she has all this cleavage showing, and her dress is really short now. And she dumps some water from the plant that's on the table and like slicks back her hair and basically looks completely different.
Yeah, this is the wonderful transformation scene where Jamie Lee Curtis becomes Jamie Lee Curtis again, where she goes from frumpy Helen to Michelle, the international hooker, and it's like astounding how much different she looks all of a sudden.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, with her hair slicked back, she's got the greatest little F-U look on her face. She's practicing her sexy poses, and you're like, I can't believe that's the same actress. That's incredible.
Yeah, and what's funny is I don't know that a lot of people know this, but Jamie Lee Curtis actually won a Golden Globe for this movie.
As she should have. I think she's the best thing in this movie. She steals this movie.
She does.
Yeah, so sexy Jamie Lee has to go into the hotel room to talk to this international arms dealer. And again, in his own way, this is Arnold Schwarzenegger being romantic. That he's the arms dealer, he's hidden in the shadows, he's holding a rose.
Anything for my princess.
And basically she's going to do her mission and get a rush, and then he's going to kiss her, and they're going to make love, and it's going to be all romantic. So in his mind, this is a very, nice thing to do, but it's not going to go exactly as he planned.
No, not quite, because he wasn't paying attention to other things that were also important going on.
Okay, so the scene starts, and Jamie Lee's there in front of him, still kind of nervous, and he's got this dubbed voice, this French voice that's telling her what to do. It's like, now unzip your dress. No, do it doucement, do it very slowly. Now, and so she strips down, and she's in her bra and panties. And once again, as I point out, Jamie Lee Curtis, once called the greatest body in Hollywood, you kind of see that again, like, oh wow, Jamie Lee's back.
Right, exactly. And even at this point, though, like when he's telling her to do this, and then he says to dance, she starts kind of dancing, not in the most sexy way.
It's like the hokey pokey she does. Now, I got to tell a story that I had a friend, a girl named Tara. We used to work together at Subway back in the 90s. And she and I loved this movie, and we used to quote it all the time. And anytime one of the two of us caught the other one dancing to the music, like we'd have music playing in Subway, like 80s music or something, if one of us caught the other one dancing to the music while we were working, we'd walk up and say, "No, dance sexy." It's right out of this movie. So yeah, that's the scene that she wants the stripper to dance for him. Jamie Lee does the hokey pokey, and he's like, "No, dance sexy." And so then she busts into what could only be described as burlesque, and I'm so glad we have a burlesque performer here. Explain this dance to people.
Yeah, so, and what's really funny about this is that, like, years later watching this movie, I can actually very much relate to it when I started to perform in burlesque because, I was also someone who, I never did anything like that, and I happened to have a friend that was into it and was like, "Hey, you should do this." And I'm like, well, I'm a new mom and I need to get some excitement in my life, so I'm going to try and do something. And when I first started to do it, that's very much how I felt, was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. And then, it was kind of like she starts to dance, and then you can just see her all of a sudden get this confidence, like, okay, like I look awesome and I'm going to dance and this guy's going to enjoy it. And so, I mean, that's basically what she does.
Now, when you first started burlesque, did you start with the hokey pokey?
I did not start with the hokey pokey, but I will say that I was a lot more awkward than I am now. So I can definitely relate to that scene.
Yeah, so here's Jamie Lee Curtis's proud moment of she starts dancing, starts feeling it, and within about 30 seconds, she is a full-on stripper, and she's feeling herself up, and, like, Arnold is like, oh my god, and Helen's really getting into it and grinding against stuff and touching herself, and Arnold even drops the tape recorder. He's so shocked. It's just a wonderful scene.
Well, and just a couple of other like little tidbits that people don't know about that scene is that number one, the part where she falls, that was planned, but Arnold didn't know it. And so his reaction when she falls is genuine, like, because he really thought that that wasn't supposed to happen, even though it was planned the whole time. And the part where he dropped his tape recorder was not supposed to happen. So, like, there were just a couple of things in there that were kind of impromptu and I thought were really great.
Yeah, but again, if there's two scenes you need to watch in True Lies, watch Simon, anything with Simon, and then watch this scene, the Jamie Lee Curtis striptease, which is like, oh my god, old Jamie Lee Curtis is back. And you cannot believe that's the same frumpy woman who was the legal secretary at the start.
Yep.
It's incredible. I love it. And again, I remember my mom just thought this was the greatest scene ever, where Jamie Lee all of a sudden takes over this movie for a little bit.
Yeah, she definitely does. And so it's a great scene, and then it just goes in a whole other direction pretty quick.
Yes, so movie number 2 is about to end, the Jamie Lee Curtis story, where she does her dance and she seduces Arnold, and she still doesn't know it's him. And he says, lie down on the bed. And so she lays down, and he comes over, and he's going to kiss her. He has a little rose, and he's going to kiss her, and this is going to be the big reveal, I'm your husband. But, of course, she doesn't know it's her husband, so she clocks him with a telephone, knocks him out, kicks him in the gut, calls him a pig, and then right before they have the big reveal and she figures out that he's actually Harry, all of a sudden the bad guys from Act 1 come bursting into the room, all the terrorists, and they come running in because they've been following Schwarzenegger this whole movie. And so now Act 3 is going to begin where the terrorists have Arnold and Jamie Lee as kidnapped. They have kidnapped them and they are now their kidnap victims.
And that's probably like one of my favorite parts too, because the whole thing is like, since Jamie Lee doesn't know that Arnold is a spy, she thinks that they're after her. And then he's all like, no, he's like, you can just leave the hooker. She doesn't need to be a part of this.
Yeah, that always got a laugh in the theater too. Jamie Lee's like, no, it's me you want, not him. It's me. I'm Michelle.
Yeah, don't listen to the hooker. She's crazy.
Yes. So Jamie Lee and Arnold are kidnapped and whisked away into a van, and they meet Juno Skinner again, the evil Tia Carrere, and a great Jamie Lee Curtis moment where she's trying to convince Juno. She's like, this is my husband, Arnold, or this is my husband, Harry Tasker. And Juno's like, no, he's an international arms dealer. And Juno and Helen don't like each other right from the start, except Helen gets knocked out. Jamie Lee gets knocked out with a little injection into her neck. And I love this little line. She's like, ow, that hurt. You bitch. And then she just falls down. So anyway, here's Act 3 of the movie where the Taskers, Mr. and Mrs. Tasker, are rushed off to an island off the Florida Keys where the terrorists have set up a base. They have 4 nuclear warheads that they have been smuggled in through Juno's artwork, and they are going to rain fire on America. And I will give you a little trivia here for Christine and for anybody else that this was, at the time, this was a actually legit security loophole that was in the U.S. Terrorists could have come in through the Florida Keys and driven up, and there would have been no customs. And the movie makers knew this, and they wrote it into the movie. And the government was very quickly to close that loophole because of this movie.
I didn't even realize that they did that because of the movie.
Yeah, it was all because of this movie, because they're like, wait a minute, this was way too easy. And Cameron's like, yeah, we looked it up. It is really easy to do this. All right, so here on the island in the Florida Keys is the Crimson Jihad, the whole section of this, the whole faction of them led by Aziz, the Sand Spider. And Arnold has been kidnapped because Arnold is supposed to film a video confirming that they have nuclear warheads and they can rain them on the U.S. And this is, of course, one of the funnier scenes here where Helen finally learns that Harry is a spy.
Yes, and she is very surprised. And it's the whole irony of it, because she was, kind of talking to somebody who said that they were a spy, but were actually a salesman. And this whole time, her husband she thought was a salesman is actually a spy.
And she takes it well by punching him in the face.
Yes.
Okay, some great Arnold Schwarzenegger one-liners here where the terrorists want Arnold to confirm that what they have is a nuclear warhead for their video. And they said, what is this? And Arnold's like, I know what this is. This is an espresso machine. No, it's a snow cone maker. Is it a water heater?
Yes, just having a little bit of fun with the terrorists.
Again, the criticism of this movie is that he made terrorists look like buffoons could not be more evident than in this scene when the terrorists are filming a video on their camcorder talking about the Crimson Jihad, how they're going to be a power, and the guy's going on a rant. Aziz is like, you have been attacking our people, you have been attacking our women and children, and you call us terrorists? This is now our time for the oppressed to fight back. And as he's filming it, the battery on their camcorder runs out.
And the look on that guy's face, you could just see him sweating, and he's like, oh God, what if this runs out? What's this guy gonna do to me?
Batteries, Aziz. That's exactly what he says.
Yep.
Big laugh in the theater, big laugh. But again, 9/11, after 9/11, terrorism, perhaps not as funny. But still, in 94, it was pretty funny.
Yes.
So this is where we find out that now they're screwed. The Crimson Jihad is going to blow up a bomb here on this uninhabited island just to show that they have nuclear capabilities. Then they're going to drive into the U.S. over the Florida Keys and blow up one major American city every week just to show that they mean things. So it's a big problem now. And Arnold and his wife, Jamie Lee, are locked in the room with the interrogator so the Crimson Jihad can find out who Arnold works for. And this is one of the funniest scenes in the movie, the interrogation scene.
Yes, it very much is. Because, I mean, at this point, Helen is extremely mad at Harry because he was a spy all this time and she didn't know. And he's, handcuffed, injected with truth serum, about to be interrogated. And the truth serum starts to kick in and she starts asking him all kinds of questions.
Yeah, okay. Shout out to the creepy interrogator guy who looks like a corpse. This old guy looks like the preacher in Poltergeist 2. It looks like he's death on wheels. He's this old guy's interrogating Arnold, and he's going to kill him, and he injects him with truth serum, and then the old guy walks away, and Arnold's handcuffed to a post, and Jamie Lee's like, "Are you injected with something?" And Arnold's like, "Yeah, truth serum," and she's like, "Is it working?" And he's like, "I don't know. Ask me something I'd probably lie about." And she says, "Are we going to die?" And he's like, "Yep." Have you ever killed anyone, Harry? Yeah, but they were all bad.
They were all bad.
So the creepy old interrogator comes in and he says, Arnold is all drugged and he's tied up and handcuffed and he's at his lowest moment. He's about to be interrogated and then killed. And the old interrogator says, "Is there anything you want to tell me before we start?" And Arnold's like, "Yeah, I'm going to kill you pretty soon." And the old guy's like, "I see. How exactly?" And Arnold's like, "First I'm going to use you as a human shield. Then I'm going to kill that guard over there with that tool on the table. And then I was thinking about breaking your neck." And the old guy's like, "Oh, and what makes you think you can do all that?" And Arnold all of a sudden drops the drugged act and says, "My handcuffs? I picked them." And then he does exactly what he said he was going to do, uses the guy as a human shield, takes out the guard, he frees himself, and just like that, Arnold is free, and he goes on a rampage where he's going to go mad ass and kill every single person in the Crimson Jihad.
I mean, just about, except for the few that got away.
Yes. And there's a wonderful scene here where, Arnold's taking a gun and blowing people away. And at one point, one guard takes Jamie Lee Curtis, holds a gun to her head, and Arnold just spins around and shoots the terrorist without even any concern for his wife's safety. And she's like, "Oh my God." And he's like, "Next time, honey, duck." Again, just so many quotable scenes. Do you have any favorite lines or scenes during this whole section?
I mean, that section, it's great. I would say definitely like the interrogation scene is probably my favorite part of that whole bit. And then I know there's an interaction between Juno and Helen where after, Arnold ends up supposedly getting blown up because Aziz tries to shoot him and he ends up in the water and everybody thinks that he's dead. And then Juno finds Helen and, takes her. And then Helen stops and slaps Juno across the face with her wedding ring, reversed so that it basically scratches her across the face. And that whole exchange I love as well.
Yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis and Tia Carrere have a wonderful cat fight in this movie, one of the best I've ever seen.
Yes.
They really do not appear to like each other much.
They certainly don't.
Although, another scene I always remember getting a huge laugh in the theater when this happened, is there's a scene where Arnold gives Jamie Lee Curtis a gun, because now she's his ally, but of course she's never done anything like this before, and he's like, "Take this gun and shoot it," and kill people. And at one point, Arnold is being attacked by all these bad guys, and he's like, "Shoot them!" And she comes running to the top of the stairs and starts shooting people, but she has no familiarity with a machine gun, so the recoil immediately knocks her backwards. She drops the gun, and the gun slowly trickles down the stairs, and as it falls down the stairs, it somehow kills every single bad guy in the room accidentally.
Yes. I don't know how you accidentally kill a room full of bad guys with a machine gun, but she did it.
Yeah, that got a huge laugh in the theater, and it's even, when I watch it now, I still laugh just watching Jamie Lee Curtis flapping her hands helplessly. It's like, oh my God. Straight up this movie is a straight up comedy, I'm telling you. This is like a James Bond comedy.
That it really is.
Okay, so now we go to the final part of the movie where all the Crimson Jihad has been wiped out except for Aziz and his warheads. Aziz is in a helicopter with one warhead. There's two other warheads being driven across the Florida Keys on the bridges to the mainland. And in the last one is Juno and a driver and Helen. They have Helen kidnapped, and this is where we're going to get a Juno and Helen catfight in a little bit. So the Omega Sector, Gibb and Faisal come, pick up Harry because they knew where he was, and they load up into helicopters and Harrier jets, which I love. And this is where we have the big grand finale of action.
It was a very expensive grand finale. Those Harrier jets cost $100,000.
Each, like, per Harrier jet?
No, I think it was total.
But this is the scene. A lot of people just remember the movie for this scene with these awesome. If you guys don't know what Harrier jets are, they're these jets that can take off vertically up and down, and they have these unbelievable, like, arsenal in them. And it's like, this is one of the first times they'd ever been seen in a movie, I would assume.
I think so. I mean, not that I remember prior to that.
So the Harrier jets come, and they see these vans with nuclear weapons being driven into Miami across the Florida Keys, and they blow up the bridges in some awesome special effects scenes.
Yes.
Which I would assume those were all miniatures. They didn't really blow up those bridges, right?
No, they built like some kind of replica or something, from what I understand.
Okay, so the Harrier jets that have been hired by the Navy take out all the terrorists in their vans, and basically the only thing driving left is the limo in the back with the driver and Juno, Skinner, and Helen. And this is where we get the wonderful cat fight. And I will, as a gentleman, I will let the lady describe this one. Please talk us through the cat fight here.
So they're in the limo, Juno and Helen, and I think, Helen seemed like she could sense, what was happening, obviously. And the second that she found an opportunity and got Juno a little bit distracted, she went for the gun to try and get her. And the gun ends up, going off a few places, ends up shooting the driver in the head. So, at this point, the limo's kind of just bouncing back and forth on this bridge as they're fighting. And then at one point, Helen grabs the champagne or wine bottle that was in there and hits Juno in the head with it and knocks her out, at least temporarily. And then she's getting through the roof of the limo, trying to find a way out. And then along comes Harry's helicopter.
Yeah, if I recall, this Jamie Lee Curtis and Tia Carrere fight won the best fight at the MTV Movie Awards that year, as it should have, because it's really the two actresses just beating the crap out of each other. And they look good too. They throw good punches.
Yes, it's a very physical fight.
Yeah, and Jamie Lee Curtis wins, the empowered woman, the spy now. She takes out this horrible arms dealer, and Tia Carrere gets knocked out. And then Helen, their limo is being driven without a driver. The driver's been shot in the head, so they're out of control, and they're going to go off the end of the Florida Keys because the bridge has been knocked out by the Harrier jets. And so we get this absolutely fantastic stunt where Jamie Lee Curtis has to stand up out of the sunroof of the limo. Arnold Schwarzenegger has to fly down with his helicopter and grab her, and he has to pull her out right before the limo goes off the edge of the bridge. And as awesome as this stunt is, what's even cooler is I believe I read Jamie Lee Curtis did this stunt herself, right?
She did. She did it on her birthday.
On her birthday. And she has said it was the coolest thing she has ever done in a movie.
Yeah, and basically the reason why she ended up deciding to do it is because she was talking about it with James Cameron, and he said that he was going to essentially be hanging out of the helicopter with a hand cam to shoot the scene, and she said if he was willing to do that, then she was willing to do the stunt herself.
That's right. James Cameron puts his money where his mouth is. He will be out there dangling out just like she is. And again, it's Some of it's done with green screen, obviously, but still, she's in a moving car being pulled up by a moving helicopter, and it was very dangerous. And mad props to Jamie Lee Curtis for pulling this off on her 35th birthday.
Yes.
Great shot. And then, yeah, so she's saved. All the terrorists die. There's a comic scene of one of the terrorists. Their truck gets teetering right on the edge of the bridge. It's going to fall, and they think they're saved. And then a bird lands on the hood, and they fall off and die. I remember that got a big laugh in the theater.
That part was funny, and then also, like, as Jamie Lee was being pulled to safety, then Tia Carrere comes to and realizes that she's about to go off the bridge and just says, "Oh, shit."
It's a shame when Tia Carrere dies in the movie, because I don't know if people are aware of this, but in France, she would be known as La Renarde, the fox, and she'd be hunted using only her cunning to survive. See how many Wayne's World references I can get in here.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, so, fare thee well, Tia Carrere. Wonderful villain in a movie. I wish she would have done more, because she just is really nasty when she wants to be. I loved her in this.
Yeah, she really was great as a villain, and I wish that, like, she would have done more. Like, she could have played a villain in another movie. It would have been wonderful.
Yeah, there's a great underrated scene earlier in the movie when Harry and Helen first get arrested, and Juno figures out that they're husband and wife, and she's like sliding all over Harry and kissing him and saying, "Oh, tell Helen about us, about how wonderful it was." Like, I just love her in that role. So I just have to give a shout out to the underappreciated Tia Carrere in this movie.
Yes.
Okay, time for the finale, the big finale of this movie, where there's only one terrorist left, Aziz. He is holed up on a high-rise in Miami with a bunch of his other Crimson Jihad buddies, and somehow they have kidnapped Dana. They found out that Harry has a daughter. They have kidnapped her at some point in the night, and she is a hostage. And he has the one nuclear warhead left, and this is the big thing. He's going to blow up downtown Miami.
Yes, and what he doesn't realize is that he has an expert thief held hostage, who ends up stealing his key to his warhead. Because I know we didn't mention it, but earlier in the movie there is a big thing where they find out that Dana is stealing money from Gibb, and so she steals the key and then tries to get away with it.
Okay, yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening at once in this last scene. People just remember the ending, but I will set it up for people who don't remember that Arnold finds out that Aziz is on a high-rise in Miami, and Arnold's like, "Give me one of those Harrier jets." And apparently we find out that he flew Harrier jets at one point, where Tom Arnold's like, "Oh, yeah, it's been 10 years, but you've been in this before." And so there's this comical scene of Arnold trying to fly in a Harrier jet and trying to take off and crushing a bunch of police cars in the process. But he eventually makes it to Miami in his Harrier, and there's Dana, his daughter, who has stolen the key that will detonate the nuclear bomb, and she runs away, and she's out on a girder on top of the building, and Aziz is coming after her, and it just will all lead to a lot of mayhem and violence and explosions here at the end.
Yes, which inevitably that was what it was going to come to. But yeah, she's out on this girder, and Aziz is trying to get her, and she's trying to balance on it because there's not a lot of room, and she gets to the point where she's almost ready to fall, and then Harry comes along in this Harrier jet, kind of hovering underneath her, telling her to jump onto it so that she can be safe.
Yeah. Her dad, who she knows as a computer salesman, has just shown up in a Harrier jet to rescue her. Surprise!
Yeah, she's like, "Dad?
Dana, get down!"
Dad, get down!
Although, I have to give a shout out to one of my favorite scenes in this movie, just pure mayhem, where there's all this floor of all these Crimson Jihadists. There's like 12 of them on one of the floors of the building, and they're looking out trying to look at stuff like through binoculars, and Arnold just flies up in his Harrier jet right into their peripheral, into their horizontal vision, and he obliterates the entire floor of the building with his Harrier guns, which I just love.
Yes, that was really good because, I mean, they're looking and they're like, "Oh, there's something really close. I need to adjust my vision." And then, oh crap, it's a Harrier jet.
Yeah. So Arnold and Faisal, his buddy, is in the high rise, happens to wipe out a bunch of the terrorists. He's the man on the inside. But together, it's really just, there's 3 bad guys in the helicopter left, and there's Aziz, who is up on the high rise. And it's kind of complicated. I'm going to try to explain this. That Arnold rescues Dana. She jumps down on the top of his Harrier jet. Aziz also jumps down onto the top of the Harrier jet, and we get this James Bond fight of them on top of this moving Harrier jet, much like, again, James Bond. It's like the end of Octopussy when they're on top of a plane. But it culminates with Arnold rolling the plane to the left, telling Dana to hold on. They spin. Aziz, the terrorist, goes flinging to the side, and he gets trapped on a warhead. There's one of the missiles on the Harrier. His backpack gets stuck there. And this will end with one of the greatest endings of any Arnold movie, and I will give you the honor of what's about to happen here.
Probably, yeah, definitely one of the best endings and like the perfect line for it. So Aziz is just hanging there, and you can see that he's, realized his situation, and Arnold has the plane turned in such a way that he can fire through the floor that he just obliterated in the building with all the other terrorist guys and shoot at the helicopter with the rest of the bad guys. And he just looks down at Aziz and says, "You're fired," and then just shoots the missile into the helicopter.
Yeah, so one of the greatest, most iconic Arnold one-liners, "You're fired," shoots Aziz on a missile into the helicopter of the other bad guys, and it all blows up. And I should point out that later, when Arnold Schwarzenegger later hosted The Celebrity Apprentice for, I believe, 2 seasons, 1 or 2, I forget, did he use that line, "You're fired," at the end? I think he did, but I can't remember 100%.
I don't know, because I didn't watch it, but I mean, I would think so, because that's typically what you say at the end there, so.
"You're fired." But I remember being in the theater. That just got a huge round of applause. Great ending to a movie. Big, spectacular explosions. Everybody blows up, and Arnold saves the day, and that's the end of the movie, basically, that everyone is back together, and Helen is back with Arnold, and now she's gotten a touch of danger, and now she trusts him because he tells her the truth, and it is a happy ending. But guess what? We're going to get a fun epilogue at the ending, which really drives home the greatness of this movie.
Yes. Also one of the best scenes, but as we've discussed, any scene with Simon is one of the best scenes, so.
Simon, he's back.
Simon's back.
Okay. So the last scene of the movie is it's a year later after Arnold has saved the day and everybody loves each other. The family's all close now. And Arnold and Jamie Lee are now a spy team, Boris and Doris. And it's a year later, and they're now called into action. We just see them at home, and everyone's happy. And Jamie Lee has much longer hair now, looks much more laid back and cool and chill. And they are called. Boris and Doris need to go into action to this mansion, not probably in Switzerland this time, but very similar to the one at the start of the movie. And we basically reenact the start of the movie only with Arnold and Jamie Lee as a team now.
Yes. And so, yeah, they're working as a spy team, and they're trying to look for their target. And then what do they happen to see? But they see Simon talking to some poor unsuspecting woman.
Yes, Simon. Despite all poor Simon the car salesman has been through, he is here in this exotic European mansion somewhere, hitting on people as a waiter, pretending that he's a spy, saying, I can't be seen here, it's too dangerous, doing the exact same shtick he did on Jamie Lee earlier in the movie. And Jamie Lee's like, "Oh, look, I see an old friend." So they go up and they confront him.
Yes, that was great. They confront him first. He sees Harry, and then he sees Helen, and then he pees himself again.
Yeah, see, "We meet again, Carlos." He's like, No, I'm not Carlos, I'm Simon." Jamie Lee puts a little tube of lipstick up to his chin like it's a gun, and she says she's going to kill him, and he pees himself all over again. Then Simon runs off, and that's basically the end of the movie, although we cannot end the movie without another tango scene where the music on the ballroom floor starts up again, and Jamie Lee and Arnold start tangoing just like he did with Tia Carrere earlier in the movie. But this one is much sexier, much better, because it is husband and wife who have rekindled their love for each other, and it ends with them tangoing, and it's just a fantastic ending to a movie.
Right, as Tom Arnold in the background says, "Harry, I know you can hear me. You're ignoring me."
Next time I get to be inside and you be in the van. I've been in the van for 15 years. And that is True Lies, my personal favorite Arnold movie. I would argue peak Arnold Schwarzenegger. I could almost argue peak James Cameron, although I think Titanic and Avatar are probably, negate that a little bit. As action movies go, I think this is peak Arnold. I think it's peak Cameron. I think it's peak Jamie Lee Curtis. It's peak Bill Paxton. It's just so awesome. There's so many good things about it. And again, just for a variety of reasons, it kind of gets forgotten because it's not a movie you're supposed to talk about with the laughing at terrorists thing. So unfortunately, that's the problem. And again, not available on Blu-ray. It's supposed to be maybe one day soon, but it still isn't to this day.
Which is very, very sad.
Terrible. It hurts me because this is, again, I think this is a movie that should have the reputation that like Terminator 2 does. I really do.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it should be right up there, with that, or even comparing to, non-Arnold movies, it should be right up there with like Die Hard. So.
Yeah. And we've talked on staff picks before about how the 90s was like the golden age of action movies. All the great action movies were the 90s. And I put this one right up there with any of them, although you could argue it's more of a comedy. But still, I cannot imagine anybody not liking this movie. It's just a fun movie.
It is. I mean, anybody that I've ever recommended it to was pleasantly surprised. So I think that it's great. And for anybody that hasn't seen it, you need to find it now.
Yeah. Oh, although we do have to point out the Elijah Dushku controversy. Do you know about that?
Yes, actually, I am familiar with that.
Okay. I didn't want to end this on a downer, but we should at least mention that in the purpose of completion. So tell people a little bit about that.
Yeah, so as you mentioned earlier, Eliza Dushku was 12 years old when this movie was made. And something that, people were not aware of course, until years later, was that the stunt director said something along those lines, that he later she had said that he had sexually assaulted her while she was working on the movie, like for an extended period of time, where he, gained her trust and stuff like that, and then ended up assaulting her. And that actually she had mentioned too that she was injured on the set, and she still maintains that injury was not unintentional, that, that he had something to do with that. Yeah,
to sum it up just a little more succinctly, this guy was grooming her, the stunt coordinator. He tried to assault her. When she rejected his advances, he specifically set up a stunt that would be unsafe, and she actually broke 2 of her ribs on the Harrier jet scene. So there's a little bit of a pall kind of cast over this movie because of that, although James Cameron, Jamie Lee Curtis, Arnold were never included or implicated. They all said they had no idea. It was all the stunt coordinator, and Eliza Dushku has said the same thing, that they didn't do anything. It was just him. But that was always kind of one of the controversies that just came out about this movie just like a year ago.
Yeah, it was pretty recent. And I mean, like all of those people that you mentioned, if I believe correctly, I think they've all come out and like said that she was, brave for talking about it, and kind of came to her defense over the situation. So yeah, it's unfortunate, knowing that happened, especially because this is a movie that I love so much. But it doesn't take away from the movie. It's just an unfortunate situation.
Yeah. See, I would agree with that. I don't even know how to phrase it, but I don't think that should take away from the amazing work that like Jamie Lee Curtis does in this, and Bill Paxton and Schwarzenegger. So you have to acknowledge it, obviously, but I don't think that should be the only thing people think about when they think about this movie, because so many other people have said this was the greatest movie they ever worked on. Like Jamie Lee Curtis raves about this movie, Schwarzenegger. They all had so much fun. They all wanted to do a sequel. And like you said, there were plans for a sequel for years, and it just never happened for a variety of reasons. But this was absolutely a huge triumph for almost everybody involved. And again, just because James Cameron made bigger things later, people kind of forget about it, but I don't think they should.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, so do you have anything else to add here about True Lies before we sign off and send our minions out to go watch it and worship it again?
Not really. I mean, it's a phenomenal movie. I think that even if you don't typically like action movies, there's enough comedy, of course, and everything else in there for you. I mean, I think there's a little bit for everybody. So it's really great. And I think that people should see it.
Yeah, and I still cannot believe I walked out of it in 1994 being disappointed because he never said, "I'll be back." This is the penance that I must live with, that I have to rave about this movie for the next 40 years because I feel bad about that.
Well, then I have to ask you, Mario, if you were going to put that line in the movie anywhere, where would you have put it?
There's like 10 different scenes. That's what kills me. There's like 10 different parts where he's leaving and he could just turn and say, I'll be back. Like in the van when the chase, the horse and the motorcycle chase, he leaves Tom Arnold in the van and he puts the sunglasses and he could easily say, I'll be back. Now, come on. How hard would it be to do that?
Yeah, that would have been pretty easy.
Okay, I do have to do one last thing before we sign off, that Arnold Schwarzenegger's career, the biggest star in Hollywood, bar none, every movie he made was an event movie, and then he did Last Action Hero in 1992, 3, and that was a huge flop, and that was like the one chink in his armor. Arnold can actually make a flop. It wasn't felt that it could be possible before that.
Right.
So it's often assumed that his career ended with Last Action Hero and he was never the biggest star in Hollywood again. But True Lies came after that. So he did have one last hurrah before he, became governor and stopped making these big action movies where he was the biggest. This really was the last big Arnold movie. I think that has to be pointed out.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
All right. Once again, Christine, I want to thank you. I'm sorry, Miss Thong. I just want to thank you for stopping by and talking about both of our favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. And again, my name is Mario Lanza. This is Staff Picks. If you need to reach me, you can reach me on staffpickspodcast@gmail.com or on Twitter @MarioJLanza. Until next time, I'll be out there looking for movies that deserve more love, and hopefully they have lots of Bill Paxton one-liners in them that I can quote and be very inappropriate with. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
I'm not a spy. I'm nothing. I'm naval lint. I have to lie to women to get laid. And I don't score much. I got a little dick. It's pathetic. Oh, God. Oh. Would a spy pee himself, huh?